Um, Thank you, Jorge, for that introduction. Can I get the next screen, please? Or the next slide? So we are going to start today with, we actually have quite a bit of information. So I'm going to start by talking about medical baseline, and then Jorge will take over and talk about the self-generation incentive program. We have a lot of information for you, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in here. At Turn, we like to say that the medical baseline program is the best kept secret in California. We estimate that probably about 80% of utility customers who qualify for this benefit have never even heard of it. So they're not even signed up. And you can help us change that. Medical Baseline provides 3 types of support to customers who depend on power for certain medical and independent living needs. Those three supports are extra discounts on monthly energy bills, extra protections against utility shutoffs when customers fall behind on payments, and extra notifications and attention in advance of planned outages. Medical baseline discounts and protections are available to all electric and gas customers of PG&E, Southern California Edison, Southern California Gas, and SDG&E, who have qualifying medical conditions regardless of their income. Now, if you or any of your customers are with a municipal utility like LADWP or SMUD, they don't offer a program called Medical Baseline, but they do often offer protections for their medically vulnerable customers. You would just have to visit their website or call customer service of those other utilities to find out more about those programs. Medical baseline discounts are also in addition to care and FARA discounts that households struggling to make ends meet may already receive. By partnering with Turn to enroll as many eligible households for medical baseline, you are contributing to Turn's Power at Home campaign to guarantee basic utility service to every resident of California. So how does medical baseline work? This is a little bit technical. If you were at our training last week, you know I like to provide a little bit of technical background. Hopefully you all had a chance to, those of you who were with us last week had a chance to look at your bills and see how you're billed. If you are on a tiered rate structure, which all baseline customers are on, all medical baseline customers are on, you receive a baseline allowance. So this is a certain amount of energy that is billed at the lowest rate, okay? Customers who sign up for medical baseline get additional energy that's billed at that lowest rate. So it turns into a kind of discount on their bill. And they can get this allowance for both electricity or gas or both, depending on the medical condition and medical equipment that customers have. And this ensures that customers whose medical devices and conditions require them to use more energy get a break on their monthly bills. So let me just give you an example. A PG&E customer on medical baseline can save anywhere from about $30 to $45 a month. That comes out to about $380 to $530 a year, depending on whether they qualify for just the electricity discount or for both gas and electricity discounts. Savings for PG&E Care customers are an additional $20 to $30 a month, or $240 to $360 a year on top of their care savings. So this is not insignificant. Now, don't forget that if customers live in Southern California, they have to submit separate medical baseline applications to both Southern California Edison and Southern California Gas. Now, in addition to saving money, medical baseline provides extra protections for customers who are in danger of having their utilities shut off because they are behind in making payments. Remote shutoffs, so shutoffs that are conducted from the investor-owned utilities offices, are banned for medical baseline customers. This means that medical baseline customers cannot be shut off through their smart meter. And this is important because what it means is that the utility company is required to go through the trouble of sending a truck and a crew out to the person's home to shut off their electricity in person, and then to send them out again to restore service once the bill has been paid. Medical baseline also requires utility companies to make a good faith effort to communicate with medical baseline customers before disconnecting their utility service. So as a result of these additional kind of barriers to disconnection, very few medical baseline customers are actually disconnected because they can't afford their bills. Now, all shutoffs are banned for medical baseline customers who are in hospice, depend on life support equipment, or have a life-threatening condition, as long as they sign up for a payment plan of no less than 12 months. Utilities are required to take extra steps to notify medical baseline customers in advance of any planned outages as well. Give me a thumbs up if you live in an area where your utility company has recently shut off power in order to avoid causing a wildfire. Anybody here? I know my colleague Constance has been there. Oh, I see Nancy's thumb being raised. Star, I see you in the chat. So a few of you have had this experience. This is part of the reason why medical baseline doesn't have an income requirement, because if the utility company needs to shut off power in a community in order to complete work on their equipment or their infrastructure, or if they're trying to avoid causing a wildfire, they have to let medical baseline customers know in advance of those disconnections, regardless of their income. The utility company has to do everything they can to send customer alerts at 48 hours, 24 hours, and just before they shut off power. And those notifications can come in the form of phone calls, whether they be automated robocalls or in-person calls, texts, emails, and medical baseline customers may even receive a door knock to make sure that they are aware and can make preparations to stay safe during planned outages. Can I get the next slide, please? Let's talk about who qualifies or who is eligible for medical baseline. As I said before, there is no income requirement, right? It doesn't matter if I'm Jeff Bezos. If my mom is on life support at home, I want to know, right? So it shouldn't that I want to know if my electricity is going to be shut off. So no income requirement. Now, the other eligibility criteria include that a person in the home has to rely on life support equipment, or they have to have a life-threatening illness or a compromised immune system, or they have to have a condition for which additional heating or cooling is medically necessary to sustain the patient's life or to prevent their health from deteriorating further. So I'm going to just go ahead and unpack the last three bullets on this slide. What is life support equipment? Life support equipment refers to any equipment that uses mechanical or artificial means to sustain, restore, or supplant a vital function, or medical equipment that is relied upon for mobility both within and outside of buildings. Some examples of qualifying medical devices. Actually, I'm not going to give this to you. I'm going to ask you to tell me in the chat box. Give me an example. Everybody here probably has an example of a medical device. So if you've signed someone up for medical baseline, help someone sign up, or just, you work in healthcare, you know what some of these devices might be, go ahead and throw them into the chat box for me. And that way I won't just read you a list here. Yes, dialysis patients qualify. So if someone has a home dialysis machine, which we see more and more, um, those apparatuses definitely qualify. They use a lot of energy. We've met people. We had one customer in Stockton who had monthly thousands and thousands of dollars worth of bills for PG&E. Tanque de oxígeno, yes, an oxygen tank, CPAPs. Nebulizers are a big one, right? We have lots of kids who who use electrostatic nebulizers for their asthma. This is a big issue. Um, let's see, electric scooters, yes, and electric wheelchairs. Some other, let's see, CPAP machines, you've got this, compressors, concentrators, sleep apnea machines, yes, CPAP machines qualify. Um, so again, any medical device used to sustain life and to keep people's health from deteriorating. Um, Somebody wrote in the chat, a client who needs to have the heater on because of their health. Absolutely. And this is, again, where especially the gas discount comes into effect, right? When people need to heat their homes in order to maintain their health. Okay. Um, Now, the second part, this life-threatening illness or a compromised immune system, some examples of qualifying conditions include paraplegia, hemiplegia or quadriplegia, multiple sclerosis, scleroderma, asthma, sleep apnea, or a compromised immune system. Now, those are the medical conditions that the utilities will list on their websites. But there's this third criteria, which is if people have a condition for which additional heating or cooling is medically necessary to sustain the patient's life or to prevent their health from deteriorating. Now, I know I'm giving you a lot of information. It's also in the fact sheets that you will receive on Medical Baseline for attending this training. So don't worry about frantically writing down notes. But this particular criteria is the most overlooked for qualifying for Medical Baseline because there's no predefined list of conditions that automatically qualify. So medical providers should be reminded of Center for Disease Control guidelines on chronic medical conditions whose treatments require adequate heating or cooling, right? So heart disease, mental illness, depression, insomnia, poor blood circulation, obesity. We also have to take into account that our elders and infants are particularly susceptible to high and low temperatures. And so sometimes a condition might not be on the list, but it just requires that the customer advocate on their own behalf with their healthcare provider who has to certify the form for Medical Baseline. Um, Now, again, there are no income requirements and there are also no immigration status requirements. Medical Baseline support cannot be used against utility customers as part of the changes to the public charge rule. Okay, so any customer of an investor-owned utility who meets this criteria is eligible without any fear of repercussions. Okay, let's go to the next slide now. Okay, there are two primary steps for becoming certified for Medical Baseline: filling out the application and then getting the application signed by a qualified medical practitioner. Now, because of the conditions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, customers can sign up for Medical Baseline online currently without a medical practitioner's signature until the moratorium ends. Do you all remember when the moratorium ends? June 30th, 2021, okay? Until that time, the utilities are not requiring um, healthcare providers to certify applications for Medical Baseline. So this is a great time to go ahead and go into the online portal and sign customers who are eligible up for Medical Baseline. Filling out that Medical Baseline information or application You can imagine it asks for information such as the customer's account number, the account holder's first and last names, the name of the resident who requires medical baseline if it's a different person from the account holder, the address where the service is provided, a telephone number, and also customer contact preferences for those times when there may be a planned outage. So how do you want, does the customer want to be notified? Is that via text? Is that, via email? Exactly. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat box. Okay, so let me see a couple more things before I hand it over to Jorge. Okay, now after June 30th, we will go back at some point to requiring a medical practitioner certification. The following healthcare providers are qualified to provide the signature on the application, okay? An MD, a doctor of osteopathy, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant, okay? We at Turn recommend that customers bring their completed application to their healthcare provider for certification and get it back with the signature, ideally. Customers should never assume that their provider will mail in their application for them. And it's best, in fact, if the customer takes a picture on their cell phone or makes a photocopy of the certified application before sending it in to their utility company. Because in the case where an application gets lost or takes a long time for the medical baseline discount to be added to their bill, this way the customer has proof that they sent the application by a certain date and can often request for that discount to be backdated on their bills if for some reason the application gets lost. Okay, there's a couple more details here. One is that if the customer's medical condition is permanent, then the customer will need to self-certify for medical baseline every 2 years in order to stay on medical baseline. If the customer's medical condition is not permanent, the customer will need to self-certify every year, and a new application, including a medical practitioner's signature, will be required every 2 years. Okay, so pop quiz. Constance, can you launch the poll for me? Or Jorge, can you launch the poll? There it is. Okay, so which of the following is not a benefit of medical baseline? Let's see who was paying attention. I'm just kidding, it's anonymous, so I won't know. I won't know who answers right or wrong. Will we see the results afterwards?
Yes, 10 more seconds for a minute. We needed the Jeopardy music right now.
I should have conspired with Constance to get the Jeopardy music.
Okay, about 71% voted. Should we go ahead and close it out? We got 73.
Let's get to 75.
One more person vote.
I feel like I always submit my answers to
And
polls.
we got it.
Closed. You
got
got it?
75. All right.
All
Thank you,
right, let's
everyone.
see.
77%.
Woohoo. Okay, I'm gonna close it out. Is that cool?
Do you want the poll results, Gabriella? Do you
Yeah,
want me
I want to see who was paying attention.
Right. 1% of the folks said extra notifications before planned outages. 84% of the folks said that extra protections against gas leaks. 1% said extra discounts on energy. And 11%, I might have said this wrong, 11% said extra protections against shutoffs.
Okay, so the three things, remember, are extra notifications, extra discounts, and extra protections. So the one thing that medical baseline does not do is protect you against gas leaks. If there's a gas leak, you should absolutely call up the utilities emergency lines to have that taken care of. But sadly, medical baseline can do nothing to prevent gas leaks. Thank you all for participating. I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor back to Jorge to talk about SGIP, or the Self-Generation Incentive Program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabriela. So I'm going to talk about the SGIP, Self-Generation Incentive Program. What is SGIP? It is a California Public Utilities Commission program. And in the very most basic, I guess, in the description, it's a rebate program for installing backup energy batteries in your home. Well, I'm gonna try to remove the poll from my screen. Okay. And I wanted to talk about, like, how does it work? So basically the way the program works is you have to first apply for funds that are available through the utility company. And when we're talking about the utility company, we're talking about the big investor-owned utility companies like PG&E, SoCal Gas, or SDG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric. Now, when you apply for these funds at the utility company, they're going to, if you qualify and you're eligible, they'll set aside those funds for you. They do recommend that before you apply, that you actually contact somebody that would install this equipment, or what they refer to as an installer. And when you reach out to these companies that install these backup energy batteries, sometimes these installers will actually do the application process for you. But still, the very first step is applying to the utility company so that they can then set aside those funds for you to get the battery, the backup battery system installed on your property. So once you apply, you have to be approved before the actual installation process begins. And assuming that you are approved and you have the funds set aside, then you can go ahead and get the equipment installed. And once it is installed and installation is complete, then the utility company will give you a rebate, which works kind of like a reimbursement. And that's basically how it works. So you apply, you get approved, you get the battery system installed, and then you get a rebate after the installation. A couple of things to know about the SGIP program is that there is limited funding for the program, and the funding that the utility companies get is renewed on an annual basis. So what does this mean practically for you and possibly your clients? What it means is that the applications are processed on a first come, first served basis. And we really want to emphasize that right now many, if not all, of the utility companies are already oversubscribed, and there are waiting lists for many of the utility companies. So again, because funding is limited and a lot of people do apply, and once that funding runs out, they have to wait until their funding gets renewed the following year. And if there's a waiting list, that's already going to take up that funding. So, and that's how it goes. Um, so that's the basics on how it works. There are also 3 types of SGIP programs, which I'm going to go into detail here in the following slides. I just want to name these programs right now. The first program, the most basic program, is the general market SGIP rebate. The next one is equity SGIP. And the third one is equity resiliency SGIP. All 3 of the programs, they have different eligibility requirements, but at the most basic level, those who qualify have to be customers of one of those utility companies in order to qualify. And then there's additional eligibility requirements for each one of the different programs. And some of the benefits for these energy storage systems is that customers, for example, that have solar panels, they might be able to use the backup energy systems when the sun is not out or during a power outage. And even if you don't have a solar system, they can be used for power outages if it's properly managed. And yeah, and it can help provide on-site power when the prices are higher and help reduce monthly bills. And the other additional benefit is that battery storage can help support emergency preparedness as well. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. And so again, these next slides are going to be talking specifically about each one of the 3 types of SGIP programs. The first one, as I mentioned, is the general market SGIP program. And the only eligibility requirements for this one is that you have to be a customer of one of the investor-owned utilities. And this program covers 25% of the cost of a backup battery system. And one of the questions that came up for me is, well, what's the average cost of a battery backup system? And it depends on the manufacturer, but they can range anywhere from 11 upwards to $18,000. So again, this general market rebate program will cover 25% of that backup battery system, and any residential customer of the investor-owned utility would be eligible for this program. The other programs that follow are a little bit more nuanced and have more eligibility details, and I'm going to go over some of those right now. But before I go into those, it's going to be a lot of information and a lot of different names of different programs. And I want to remind you that these are all going to be in the fact sheets that we're going to send to you all after the training. So if you don't follow something or something is completely new, then don't fret. You'll be getting those in the fact sheets as well. So the SGIP equity rebate program, this one actually covers a lot more of the cost of the battery backup system, up to 85% cost. And in order to be eligible for this, this program, you have to meet one of several different criteria. One of the criteria is you have to live in a single family home that is also subject to some resale restrictions. And the home can be participating in what's known as the SASH program, which is the Single Family Affordable Solar Homes program. Another eligibility criteria, if you live in an apartment complex and don't necessarily live in a single family home, low income apartment units with 5 or more units that are located in a disadvantaged community, that's what DAC stands for, or 80% of the residents in that apartment unit are considered low income, may also be eligible for these backup energy systems. And another criteria as listed on the slide here is if the property is multifamily and is participating in the SOMA program, the Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing, then they would also be eligible. Some other criteria involve living anywhere in Californian Indian country. And again, there's a few more other eligibility points that you'll also be able to review in the fact sheet. So the last program can cover up to 100% of the cost of the battery backup system. In addition to being a customer of the utility, you have to meet must meet the following criteria. You have to have experienced 2 or more PSPSs, which is public safety power shutoffs, right? Or live in what's called tier 2 or tier 3 high fire threat district. So you live in an area that is in threat of a fire. There you're offered different designations like tiers. And so tier 2 or tier 3 are the ones that fit within the eligibility criteria for this rebate program. So you have to have that, and you have to have the following criteria. You have to live either in multifamily deed restricted housing or a single family home with the resale restrictions. Currently enrolled in medical baseline, and you have to have been notified you have notified the utility of serious illness or life-threatening conditions, and your home relies on electric pump wells for water. So meeting that criteria, then you might be eligible to get 100% of the cost of these backup energy systems covered for you. Again, keeping in mind the process, which is first applying for the funds, making sure that you get approved for the funds, and then getting it all installed, and then you'll be eligible for the rebate program after installation. A lot of information. I totally get it. When I first read through this, it was like really confusing for me too. A lot to take in. So just want to kind of test out what you were able to pick out today. So using the annotate feature that we used in the beginning for the feelings chart, please go up to the screen, choose annotate, and answer this question by putting a stamp or a mark inside the box that you think that pertains to the question, answer to the question. So who qualifies for the SKIP programs? So just take a minute, put a stamp or draw inside the box of the answers that you think. And there's multiple answers, so it's more than just one. So the answers are low income consumers, baseline consumers, residential consumers with IOUs, or consumers who can afford to pay for the batteries. It's kind of a trick question, kind of not. You have many chances. You can at least 25% right on the answers. All right, good. Great, great, okay. I love that folks are really taking advantage of the annotate feature. Okay. So, so I think the more appropriate answers, and feel free to continue all of them. Somebody circled them all. That's awesome. I think the more appropriate answers would be definitely you would have to be medical baseline in order to qualify for the equity resiliency program. That is one of the eligibility criteria. Don't have to be medical baseline for the other two, okay, just for the equity resiliency. Definitely for all three programs, you have to be a residential customer of one of the utilities. And consumers who can afford to pay for the batteries, yeah, if they can afford to pay for the difference, like equity offers 85%, so that means you have to pay for the 15, and the regular general market offers 25% rebate, which means you would have to be required to cover the other 75%. So if you can afford that and you're a utility customer, then yeah, you would be able to get that. And low income consumers, that is, that is a maybe. Yeah, it could be that it's a low income consumer as long as they meet some of the other eligibility criteria, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a low income consumer to qualify. But it's possible that a situation would be that there is a low income consumer that meets the other eligibility criteria. So, so thank you so much. I hope again you're going to get a fact sheet you'll be able to reference after this. So don't feel like you have to memorize all of this. And with that, I'll go ahead and I'll turn it back over to Gabriela.
Okay, can everybody join me in giving an applause reaction to Jorge on his first training? I feel like Constance and I kind of threw him into the deep end of the pool with this part of the training. It's definitely a lot of information, and I think he did a really great job of explaining it. And he also put together a really fantastic fact sheet. So all of those details will be available to you. So as we close out, I do want to share that TURN is a party, a formal party in the California Public Utilities Commission de-energization proceeding. There's a whole mouthful there. But basically what that means is that the proceeding that provides guidelines on planned outages to avoid wildfires, so what they like to call public safety power shutoffs, that's overseen through a proceeding that's been open for the last couple of years. Every time the utilities shut off people's power in order to avoid a wildfire, they have to file a report 10 days after these events. The public has 15 days after they file their report to respond to those reports. And one important way that your organization can make an impact is by letting TURN know how your constituents were impacted by those planned outages, so that we can make sure that the PUC doesn't just hear from the utility companies, but instead we bring as many voices of the people who were affected to the commission. We encourage you to write up a brief report. It can be a narrative or just even a bulleted list of the impacts that a planned outage had in your community. You can comment on what kind of notification community members received in advance of the outage, what kind of impact vulnerable community members experienced. Were they able to access community resource centers? Were they able to get support for charging medical devices, et cetera, et cetera? What were communications like between your utility company and your organization, or a utility company and the local government, or the utility company and your community? What was the quality of response, the quality of that communication? What was the effectiveness of community resource centers, right? Were they accessible? Were people able to stay there and charge equipment, or stay cool or warm, or whatever needs they might have had? And in particular, any impacts that you can quantify, such as the number of people who are negatively affected, the amount of costs incurred by your organization or community members. Anything we can quantify and bring to the commission is always helpful. Your comments can either be paraphrased in our interns report with or without attribution, with or without citing you as a source. Or we can include your report as an addendum to our report. And so if you'd like more information about how to get involved with this process, please don't hesitate to contact me so we can set up a time to discuss this further. And as always, you are, of course, invited to sign up for our online action alerts, to become a member of TURN at turn.org/actions. And of course, to sign up for additional trainings in this series. Next week, we'll be doing a very basic primer on CARE, FARA, and the other support programs provided by the investor-owned utilities. And 2 weeks from today, we will be doing an in-depth dive into the new arrearage management plan, which offers customers, CARE customers in particular, the opportunity to be forgiven up to $8,000 worth of debt. This is a new program. We really want to make sure we get as many people signed up for the arrearage management plan as possible before the moratorium ends. We think this is going to be a really important tool available to customers who are struggling to make ends meet, especially right now during the pandemic. So I'm going to do one more thing before I open it up for a Q&A. I'm just going to go ahead and put the Padlet link in the chat box. If you wouldn't mind dropping us a little information about what worked for you about this training, any recommendations for improvement you might have, or any additional topics that you might have that you might want us to either develop a training in the future or talk more about. So you are welcome to, at your convenience, go to that Padlet and give us a little mini evaluation. And with that, I will also open up the floor for any questions. We recognize it's 2 o'clock, so if folks need to go, we will be sharing recordings of this later on, but we will stick around in case folks have questions that we can answer. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Gabriela, I have some questions as I was at the beginning of the, prior to the training, I had asked Jorge if I could ask some questions that pertain to AMP, but he said, let's do that afterwards. So
yeah, if we could
even offline
first see if there are questions about medical baseline and planned outages, and then we're happy to stick around and answer your questions about AMP.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Richard, for your patience. Does anybody have a medical baseline or a planned outage related question? No. Okay, well, maybe we can answer a question about the arrearage management plan.
Okay,
Thanks, Richard.
okay. Regarding the recertifications for Care and Fair and Lifeline that are due to expire in June. Oh no, that's I should say, do this recertifications expire with the disconnections at the end of June? You know,
I'm
you
not-
know, right now, they're not supposed to ask people to recertify, but at the end of June, now can they start asking people to recertify, or is that going to keep going on?
So sorry, you're asking specifically about medical baseline?
No, no, no. This is the AMP. I
S-
guess this
Um,
pertains to AMP.
so the AMP program just launched like 3 days ago.
Yeah,
And
I know this. It's probably apples and oranges, but it just because I was going through the PowerPoint that was sent out, and that was I was when I was going through that. So that it just kind of like piqued a question in my head about the recertifications.
so the AMP program won't require a recertification because the idea is that after 12 months,
Yeah.
the customer will have had all of their debt forgiven. So let me just give you an example. Let's say that back in June, I lost my job and I stopped making payments on my utility bills because there's a moratorium on shutoffs. I know I'm not going to get shut off. So I'm, scrambling to try to make all my other ends meet here, pay my rent and pay for childcare or whatever other expenses I have in my home, right? And so I've made a calculated decision not to pay my utility bill. But so then let's say that at the beginning of July, now my bills are due and I owe $1,200 to the utility company. What I can do at that point is I can call up Edison or PG&E or whoever my utility company is, and I can say, I'm a care customer. I lost my job. I've signed up for care, and I owe $1,200. And so what they will do is they will forgive 1/12 of that $1,200, so $100 every time I make an on-time full current payment of my current bill, right? So say in July, I sign up for AMP and I get my next bill and it's $51 and I pay it completely and in full and on time, then $100 are forgiven of my utility debt, my arrearages. That's why it's called the arrearage management plan, right? So then for every month that I make an on time and full payment, they will forgive $100. And then at the end of that 12-month period, my $1,200 have been completely forgiven. And I can continue to make my payments. And during those 12 months, I can miss up to 2 non-sequential payments. So I can miss, say, August and December, but I can't miss November and December, as long as I make it up the following month. So if I miss a payment in August, then I make it up in September, then I continue to stay on the plan. If at some point, let's say I haven't found a new job or something else happens and I can't afford my bill and I fall out of the AMP, then at that point, whatever debt has already been forgiven is still forgiven. I don't have to, doesn't get put back on my bill or anything, but then I have to wait another 12 months to re-register for the AMP program.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but regarding the recertifications on care, within those 12 months, can they ask you to recertify? Because right now they're prohibited from asking you to recertify.
So are you, I'm sorry, I don't know if my colleagues have a better response to this, but do you mean by recertification for care, do you
Yeah,
mean
for the discount.
income certification?
Yeah,
Or,
qualification, I guess.
yes,
If you
okay,
qualify.
so yes, I mean, the utility companies have a regular system that's it's kind of like a random audit. It's not exactly random because they try to get every single care customer audited within a certain number of years. But so let's say I've been on care for many years and my name comes up in their audit. Yes, they will be able to come
Okay.
to me and ask for income verification.
Okay. And I think with that scenario that you described about paying for the I think you already answered my question that should you falter and those 2 consecutive non-payments and you're dropped from the program, you're still liable for the remainder of that. You're still on the hook for the remainder of that unforgiven amount.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And let me just say a couple of things about that. One is that let's say, for example, I find a new fancy job and I no longer qualify for care, but I'm 6 months into my AMP. The utility will allow me to finish up the AMP.
Oh, that's good.
And if I owe more than $8,000, because the AMP will only forgive up to $8,000, then whatever is left over in debt after the AMP is completed, I can qualify for a 12-month payment plan for that debt in excess of $8,000. And we will definitely be going through all of these details and more for our AMP training in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Are there any other questions? No other questions. Wow, this was a quiet group. Thank you, Audrey, for the
Yeah.
for the applause.
All right.
All right.
Shall we call it?
Yeah, I guess we're gonna call it. You have our information. It's on the flyer. If anybody has questions afterwards, feel free to reach out. And hopefully we'll see you all next week. Please let any colleagues know about next week's training. It's a primer on utility programs.
Yeah. All right. See everybody next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the questions.